The Zodiac Killer said something strange. He said he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. This idea appeared in his letters and his ciphers. It was his reason, his stated motive for the murders. He wasn't killing for money, he wasn't killing for revenge, not in any traditional sense. He was killing to build an army of servants for his own personal paradise. This is one of the most chilling and bizarre parts of the entire case. It's what separates him from many other killers. It points to a mind that wasn't just broken, but was actively building its own reality. A reality where he was a god, and his victims were just property. To understand what he meant, you have to go back to his words. The idea first showed up in the decoded solution to his 408-symbol cipher, which he sent to newspapers in 1969. The end of the message was clear. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill something. It gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all that I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or atop my collectiog of slaves for my afterlife. There it is, laid out simply. He kills for fun, and he kills for slaves. The two ideas are linked. The fun is in the hunt, the thrill of killing the most dangerous animal, but the purpose, the grander goal, is the collection of souls. This wasn't just a throwaway line, it became a core theme of his communication with the world. He returned to it again and again. He saw his victims not as people with lives and families, but as future servants, notches on his belt that would pay off in eternity. It's a level of dehumanization that is hard to comprehend. He wasn't just ending their lives on Earth, he was claiming ownership of their existence forever. This concept of an afterlife with slaves sounds like something from an ancient epic or a fantasy novel. But Zodiac was a modern killer operating in California in the late 1960s. So where did he get this idea? The most direct and widely accepted source is a short story from 1924 called The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell. The Zodiac himself basically points us to it. In his letters, he repeatedly talks about man being the most dangerous animal, a direct echo of the story's theme. The story was made into a movie in 1932, and it was a well-known piece of pop culture. The plot of The Most Dangerous Game is simple and horrifying. A big game hunter named Sanger Rainsford is shipwrecked on a remote island. The island is owned by a wealthy Russian aristocrat, General Zaroff. Zaroff is a hunter too, but he's become bored with hunting animals. He explains to Rainsford that he has found a new, more exciting prey humans. He stocks his island with shipwrecked sailors and then hunts them for sport. Zaroff sees his victims not as people, but as game. He gives them a head start, a knife, and some food. Then he hunts them down with his pistol. He sees it as a contest of wits, the ultimate challenge. He is the master, the predator. They are the prey. The parallels to the Zodiac's mindset are impossible to ignore. The Zodiac called man the most dangerous animal. General Zaroff in the story says, I wanted the ideal animal to hunt. Must have courage, cunning, and, above all, it must be able to reason. That animal, he concludes, is man. Zodiac saw his murders as a hunt. He stalked his victims. He attacked them in remote places, lovers' lanes, a quiet lakeside. These were his hunting grounds. He saw it as a game, a contest between him and his victims, and later, between him and the police. But the slaves for the afterlife part is a Zodiac invention. It's not in The Most Dangerous Game. Zaroff is an atheist who believes that when he dies, that's it. His pleasure is purely in the thrill of the hunt on Earth. Zodiac took the central idea of hunting humans for sport and added a twisted, pseudo-religious layer to it. He created a cosmic justification for his actions. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a collector. He was a deity preparing his kingdom. This addition is what makes Zodiac's psychology so uniquely disturbing. He took a piece of fiction and warped it into a personal theology. So, what does this tell us about his motive? It suggests his motive was rooted in a profound fantasy life. For most people, there's a clear line between fantasy and reality. We can enjoy a scary movie or a dark story, but we don't bring its logic into our daily lives. For the Zodiac, that line seems to have been completely erased. He wasn't just inspired by a story, he was living it, and he was improving it, making it his own. The real world was just a stage for his elaborate and deadly fantasy. This fantasy was all about power and control. In his real life, whoever the Zodiac was, he was likely a nobody. He was probably someone who felt powerless, insignificant, and overlooked. Serial killers often come from backgrounds of failure and frustration. They feel cheated by life, they lack the social skills, the talent, or the luck to get the respect and admiration they crave. So they create a secret identity, a powerful alter ego. The Zodiac was that alter ego. As the Zodiac, he wasn't a failure, he was a mastermind. He was smarter than the police. He was more powerful than his victims. He was a god holding the power of life and death in his hands. The collecting slaves idea is the ultimate expression of this power fantasy. It's not enough to dominate someone in life, it's not enough to kill them. He needed to own them forever. This belief, whether he truly held it or just said he did, served a deep psychological need. It transformed his pathetic, ugly crimes into something grand and epic in his own mind. He wasn't just a killer leaving bodies in a ditch, he was a pharaoh building his eternal court. Each murder wasn't an end, it was an acquisition. Think about the sheer arrogance of it. To believe that you have the right to not only end someone's life, but to claim their soul for eternity. This points to an extreme malignant narcissism. A narcissist sees other people not as individuals with their own feelings and rights, but as objects, tools to be used for their own gratification. They are props in the narcissist's personal movie. Zodiac's victims were just that. They weren't Paul Stein, Darlene Ferrin, or Cecilia Shepard. They were Slave 1, Slave 2, and so on. They were items for his collection. This motive also served a very practical purpose in his campaign of terror. It was a performance. The Zodiac Killer wasn't just killing people, he was creating a public menace, a supervillain. The letters, the ciphers, the costumes, it was all theater, and every good villain needs a good motive. A simple motive like robbery would be boring. It would make him just another criminal. But a motive like collecting slaves for the afterlife is bizarre, terrifying, and unforgettable. It ensures that people will talk about him. It makes him sound like more than a man. It makes him sound like a monster, a demon from another world, and it worked. The slaves concept terrified the public. It was so alien, so incomprehensible. How do you reason with someone who believes that? How do you stop someone whose goals are not of this world? It was a way of saying, you can't understand me, your rules don't apply to me, I'm playing a different game, a bigger game, and you are all just pawns in it. He was deliberately crafting his own legend, and this otherworldly motive was a key part of that legend. It also functioned as a profound taunt to the police. By giving this motive, he was essentially mocking their investigation. Police look for logical motives: money, jealousy, revenge. By presenting a motive that was completely illogical and supernatural, he was throwing sand in their eyes. He was telling them that their conventional methods of profiling and investigation were useless against him. He was on a different plane of existence, a higher level of thinking. But the biggest question remains, did he actually believe it? Did he truly sincerely believe that when he died, he would wake up in a paradise populated by the souls of the people he murdered? It's impossible to know for sure, but we can explore the possibilities. One possibility is that he did believe it 100%. This would suggest he was suffering from a severe delusional disorder. His mind had created a complete, self-contained belief system that justified his actions. In this scenario, he wasn't just pretending. The fantasy was his reality. He might have been a paranoid schizophrenic or had some other psychosis that detached him from the real world. For someone in this state, the Slavs for Paradise idea wouldn't seem strange at all. It would be the simple, logical truth of his universe. The letters weren't a performance, they were scripture, they were his gospel. Another possibility is that he didn't believe it at all. He was a cunning, manipulative sociopath who knew exactly what he was doing. He knew it was a lie, but it was a useful lie. It was a tool to create fear, to mislead police, and to build his own myth. He might have picked the idea from The Most Dangerous Game and embellished it because he knew it would have the maximum psychological impact. He was a terrorist, and his weapon was not just a gun or a knife, but a terrifying idea. In this view, the Zodiac was a performer, an actor playing a role. The slave's motive was just part of his costume, as much a prop as the hooded executioner's outfit he wore at Lake Berryessa. There is a third, and perhaps most likely, possibility. It lies somewhere in the middle. He probably didn't believe it in the same way a religious person believes in heaven or hell. It wasn't a matter of pure faith. Instead, it was a fantasy that he chose to indulge. A story he told himself so often and with such conviction that it became a kind of personal truth. He knew it was a construct, but he lived within it anyway because it gave his life meaning and purpose. It was a functional delusion. Many people with deep-seated fantasies operate this way. They build a world in their heads where they are powerful, respected, and important. For the Zodiac, that world involved him being a master in the afterlife. The murders were a way to make that fantasy feel real. Every time he killed, he was adding another brick to the foundation of his fantasy world. The letters were his way of announcing the rules of his world to the rest of us. He may have been fully aware on some level that it was a construction, but it was a construction he preferred to the bleak reality of his actual life. The line between believing and pretending was, for him, probably very blurry, or maybe it didn't exist at all. The fantasy was the man, and the man was the fantasy. This idea of collecting people has some faint, dark echoes in human history. Ancient kings and emperors, like the pharaohs of Egypt, were sometimes buried with their servants, who were killed so they could continue to serve their masters in the afterlife. It's a primal, ancient expression of ultimate power, the belief that your dominion extends beyond the grave. Zodiac was tapping into the same dark well of human arrogance. He was a pathetic, modern man trying to be a pharaoh. His lovers' lanes were his pyramids, his victims were his unwilling servants. Ultimately, the phrase collecting slaves for the afterlife is a window into the Zodiac's soul, or what was left of it. It reveals a mind obsessed with a few key themes. The first is power. Absolute power over others, the power to decide who lives and who dies, and the power to own them forever. The second is identity. He was building a new identity for himself, one that was fearsome and legendary, to replace the failed identity of his real life. The third is a game. Life and death were a game to him, a hunt, and the slaves were his trophies, his high score. The phrase tells us that his violence was not random or mindless, it was purposeful. It had an internal logic, even if that logic was insane. He wasn't just lashing out in rage. He was working toward a goal. He was on a mission from himself for himself. Each attack was a step towards completing his grotesque collection, and this is perhaps the most frightening thing of all. He had a reason. It wasn't a reason that makes any sense to a healthy mind, but it was enough for him. It was enough to make him pick up a gun, drive to a quiet spot, and end a young couple's life. He did it for his collection. He did it for his paradise. When we try to understand the Zodiac Killer, we are left with more questions than answers. We don't know his name. We don't know what he looked like. We don't know why he stopped. But through his words, we get a glimpse of his motive. He wanted to be a god in his own private heaven, a heaven populated by the ghosts of the people he had terrified and murdered. The phrase, collecting slaves for the afterlife, was not just a strange clue in a difficult case. It was his entire philosophy, his declaration of purpose. It was the name he gave to the terrible, empty hole inside himself, a hole he tried to fill with the lives of others. And the fact that we are still talking about it, still chilled by it, means that in a way, his performance was a success. He created a legend, and at the heart of that legend is this simple, horrifying idea of a man who killed for slaves.